Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to Embrace Live. I'm Larissa Williams, I'm your host, and I'm here with special guest Heather Paton. And Heather, thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
You drove all the way from Edmonton, yes. All the way.
All the way.
All the way. I'm so glad to have you. We're going to jump right in, but before we do, I'm just going to make sure we're all rolling here. Do you see us going? We are. Sometimes there's like a delay. But before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit about yourself. You're with Summit Church out of Edmonton. You know Pastor TJ's good friends. We love Pastor TJ here at Embrace Worship. But tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so yes, my name's Heather. I'm a pastor on staff at the Summit Edmonton alongside of Pastors Chris and Nikki. And actually, when I moved to Edmonton,
from
London, Ontario.
Oh, okay.
So we had church planted there, moved here, and I had the honor of pastoring alongside Pastor TJ at our west location of the Summit, which was a blast, and that was before he moved here. But I've been happily married. Well, I say I've been married for 26 years, happily married for 24.
Oh, I love that. We're 25 this year, okay. So we're close.
Yeah, we're close.
Yeah.
And then we have 5 amazing children. Our 2 oldest are already married off, and we have 3 incredible grandchildren.
Can you believe she's a grandma? I want whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and at the Summit, I oversee all of our student ministries. So I teach Sunday school on Sundays with our preteens, which are a blast. They're so much fun, and then I teach our youth on Wednesday nights. So yeah, awesome. It's a lot of fun.
So you're a busy lady.
Busy lady.
You're doing lots. Well, I love this, and I want to dive right in because I want to get everyone up to speed with why I wanted to have you on. You wrote a post, and I'd like you to share just a little bit first, because you shared with me that you are a prophetic writer. Explain what that is for people, because I do believe that this was a prophetic thing that you wrote. So I would love you to set that up so that people understand a little bit about what that is, that you're not just always pumping this stuff out there. Yeah. This just kind of came to you.
It is. So I say that term loosely because I often will have something brewing in my spirit. I'll be thinking about something, kind of gets agitated, and then I'm like, there's something needs to be released. And so then I become a mad woman on the computer, and just something is released in and through me, and it usually is very timely. A lot of people will say this is very timely for me, or this helped me have breakthrough. I'm not good at saying, every Friday I'm going to sit down and encourage the body. I'm not necessarily good at that, but when there's something brewing in my spirit, I love to kind of meditate on it with the Lord and ask for his help to release it.
So good. And it did resonate with a lot of people, because I think the last time I checked, there was like 26,000 shares or something on it.
Yeah, there was.
Is that right?
Yeah, maybe 2,600.
Was it?
Okay.
Maybe I added an extra zero, but it was really good. And I'm like, as soon as I saw it, I read it, and then it stayed with me for a couple days, and I'm like, I need to message you, because I think this is something we need to talk about. And I'm going to set it up here, and then we'll go from there. But this is what grabbed me. First, you had wrote in the box, yes, Judas was at the table, but, full caps, he wasn't invited to the garden. And that's what this is going to be about. And we prayed right before we went live, and Heather said something that I love, that we need to become good boundary keepers. And that's a word that maybe triggers some of you. Maybe you don't like it. We're going to talk about why it's healthy today and building positive friendships. But you start out, I'm going to read this, and then I want you to pick it up. Everyone's talking about the let them theory. I gotta confess, I bought the book. I love the theory. It really grabbed me. I thought it was so good, which I think is primarily a great theory. To be honest, my husband has lived this way since we met, and although initially I thought it was him not caring, love that, I quickly realized how healthy mentally it can be when you live like this. Let them misunderstand you. Let them make other plans. Let them think what they want. Let them go if they need to. Interestingly enough, this was Jesus' theory long before Mel released the book. Let's talk about it, because when we say let them misunderstand you, all of us have that thing inside of us that we just want to be understood. So it's really hard to get in that place where it's like, okay, I gotta let them misunderstand me and not feel like I gotta defend myself.
Yes.
How do we do that?
Yeah, I think that's hard. For me, if I feel like someone's misunderstood me, of course we want to justify why we did what we did, and if you only knew why I did that, then... But oftentimes people will take something like a dog with a bone and they'll go off with it. Right. I think it was John Bevere years ago said something, because my husband recites it, about you can't stop at every dog that barks. If you stopped at every dog that barked and never went forward, we would never go forward. And so I think in life, especially now with the internet or social media, people put a nasty comment, so you take it down, you don't say what you wanted to say.
Right.
But really our social media platform is for us to be able to give expression for something, or we're in a conversation, people say, no, your opinion matters.
Yeah.
But we say that until it disagrees with ours.
Come on.
Right? Because we say, we really want to hear what you have to say, but then if we say it and we release it and it doesn't match up with mine, then I don't really have the grace to hear it. So we feel we have to justify, which I think part of that is healthy, but a lot of people get crippled because they're misunderstood.
Yeah. And they get hung up on that. And then they don't feel accepted and they shut down. And
cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it is so important to share don't you think we're not good anymore at disagreeing?
Yes.
We don't disagree well.
No, we delete. We say,
we cancel people.
Yeah, cancel culture.
Cancel culture, exactly. Yes. Jesus let people walk away. I thought this was so good, Heather. And he let them think what they wanted. And you know what he did? He kept moving. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where, for me, that really jumped out at me, because Jesus didn't care. Jesus walked on and did his thing and let people think what they want. Why is that so hard for us? Why is that so hard? We want to follow, Jesus' example, and yet the very things that he did we find so hard to do and walk away from difficult or toxic situations.
Yes. And because he cared for people, but he knew his assignment.
So good.
Right? So he cared for the people. It's not like he said, well, I don't care if they come, but he was saying, you're welcome to come. This is the way I'm going.
Right.
And if you want to come, great. And if you don't want to come, that's your loss, but I still have to carry on with the mission set before me.
Right. And don't you think part of that problem is nowadays people don't really know what their assignment is. Mm-hmm. So they're following around, they're trying to pick up someone else's assignment, they're trying to do what someone else is doing. Oh, I love what she's doing. They try to mimic it. And then when it doesn't work, what do I do? They don't know what their assignment is.
And you see that so much. You'll see constantly people talking about be your authentic self. There's no one in the world like that. You can buy posters at every shopping center you go to. There's posters, there's things hanging on the wall, but deep down inside, we wrestle with, what if God's called me to this and it isn't as flashy as what you're doing? Well, I know I'm called to encourage people, but I don't have a following like Embrace. And so we start to compare, and we say, don't worry about don't compare yourself. We say that. You can buy 100 t-shirts with it on it, and yet people struggle with where do I fit in? What does that look like?
I think that's even more of a struggle now, like you say, with social media and knowing our assignment. And it's a little bit of a sidebar, but I think because you mentioned it, I'd love to, maybe you're watching today and you're saying, I don't even know what my assignment is. How do people dig into that and really find out with confidence? And I think what you said is so good. We think it's not as flashy, and I hate that. We've got to be okay with finding what God has called us to do. That's where you're going to be the most fruitful.
Yes. And so I think finding your calling is really, you're seeking the Lord every day.
Yeah.
Now, my mom bought a plaque for my younger brother years ago, and it said, enjoy the journey. Because what happened is that was in a season where every time you went somewhere, someone would give you a prophetic word, or this is what I feel you're called to, or you carry this on your life, so much so that you're so eagerly looking to the end that you forget the beauty of the middle. Right. And so I always say, if you sleep in tomorrow by accident, that's okay. You're not going to skip over your journey. God's going to meet you where you're at, and you're going to end up exactly where you're meant to be, because things start bumping into you as you just start seeking the Lord. And I know that sounds very simplistic, but as you start to seek Him, things will start bubbling up inside of you. There's desires, and you're thinking, I desire to do this. Right. No one else is desiring.
Or your natural giftings
start to illuminate. And so I think that's it, is we might have heard a word, seen someone's end goal, their end ministry, and we think, I want that, but we don't realize it's a process. It's
what cost them to get there.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And being okay with the journey. I think it's so true, and it's worth repeating. Like, we've got to look at our lives and be okay with where we are, and like you're saying, enjoy where we are, because if we don't go through the right process, we won't reach where we need to be in order to get to where we want to be, because it's a growth process.
Yeah, that's right.
So good. I love that. I want to get back to this, back to your quote. I also keep seeing, this was so good. I'm going to have to put all this in the chat so you all can break it down, but it's really good. I also keep seeing people talk about something contrary to the let them theory, which is Jesus' love was so big, he invited Judas to his table, and we need to be more like Jesus. I don't know why, but when I read things like this, it drives me crazy. Me too.
And yes.
Me too. That's religion.
And when I see it, it drives me bonkers. And that's why this day I was like, there's something brewing. Like, what is it? Because I do think sometimes when we get in those positions, well, Jesus welcomed everyone. For some of us, it might be because we don't know how to keep a healthy boundary, or we don't want to have an awkward conversation.
Right.
And so we just
people
bring
pleasing.
Everybody in. Yeah, people pleasing. And so we bring everyone in, or we've lived a life of trauma and dysfunction, and we keep cycling around that, and it's because we haven't learned where to put a healthy boundary. We know in a situation where our peace feels compromised. And yet sometimes we'll hop over that to please somebody, to make sure that they don't feel not included. And that's a big thing I hear all the time. Well, we need to include everyone. I'm like, it's impossible. If you have a table with 6 chairs, you're probably having 6 people for dinner. Yeah. If you have a car that has 5 seats, you probably say to your friend or to your kids, you can bring 3 other friends because me or you're in the front. So it's not always about exclusion. It's just about healthy boundaries.
Right. Yeah. Right. And why is that such a trigger for people today? Like, I think we have, do you think that it's because we've lived a season where it was everybody, we got to love and include everybody, like you just said, and now people are going, wait a minute, my peace, I feel agitated, I don't feel peaceful, I feel, well, what is that? And so people are now looking at things going, okay, I need a smaller circle.
Yeah, they are, and they're cutting people off, or they're isolating. So they say it's healthy boundaries, you can go the opposite and you can isolate. Yeah. It's not healthy boundaries at all. No. It's just that you're isolated.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
Especially when you're struggling with something, I do tend to like isolate and withdraw.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people
to protect yourself.
Yes. Yeah. I would say, oh, we're introverted, I'm recharging. No, you're avoiding.
You're avoiding.
Right? So it can be both and, right? Some people can avoid and appear to say, well, I've been burnt, I'm church hurt. And I'm thinking, well, great, if you talk to a pastor, because they've been church hurt too. Yeah,
but it's on both sides. We talked about church hurt with Pastor TJ last week, and so it's so true, and it is something that we all will encounter in our life, but it's kind of like my grandma used to say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
That's right. Yeah. And I think we live in a season where people have FOMO, the fear of missing out. Part of that is because they're broken. Because for me, when I go online, say at night, and I see you're having dinner with my other friend, I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't know they knew each other. That's amazing. Yeah. But if you're healthy and whole, you can celebrate people building a relationship, but someone else can see that exact picture and they feel left out. They feel excluded, abandoned, and that was never the intention. That's what I tell people. If I was excluded on purpose, that's different to be like, well, we don't want them there. But if it's just because whatever, I think that's great.
So do you think that we are more emotionally unhealthy now because of social media than ever before? Because you and I kind of grew up during the same time. We didn't, if our friends hung out, you didn't know till Monday at school.
Idea. Yeah, you had no idea. And so we've really tried with our kids to just say, not everyone can be invited. Right. Not everyone can have everyone over. And so even my husband, if something's bothering me, he'll go, who cares? Yeah. And then I'm like, yeah, why do I care? Why does that actually matter? It kind of pulls you into alignment instead of someone sinking your ship with you. To be like, I can't believe that. And then it becomes this big bitter ball.
And who we surround ourselves, when you say, especially you're in ministry, who we surround ourselves with matters. Not everyone will be or should be invited to your table. That's kind of what we're talking about today.
Yes. And I think that's it. Like we'll talk in that post, it talks about the 70, the multitude. There's going to be a multitude. You go to a school, your family function, whatever. You've got your great aunts, you've got other parents, teachers. The multitude's amazing. Yeah. You're not going to tell the multitude. Well, you shouldn't be telling the multitude.
You shouldn't.
Of all your, what's going on in your inner man and your inner spirit, things you're struggling with with your kids or your spouse. You don't just openly announce that. And then it goes to your 12. Like Jesus had the 12. Yeah. And they were closest to him, but he still had the 3. Right. And I think what we do is we have the 12, people are sharing information, sharing so much stuff, but they're actually just not as trusted always or mature.
To carry it. That's what and that's exactly where I wanted to go, because how do we discern the difference? And you say this, Jesus had different circles and layers to friendship. I think that's something that we've not done well, that we're needing to learn to do better. He had the multitude, the 70, the 12, the 3, the 1. And he never, this is what I love, he never apologized for it. And I think that is what we're kind of talking about today, is how do we learn and discern the circles? How do we, confide in certain people? Not everyone needs to know your story if you're watching today. We've learned kind of the hard way, haven't we? Because we've been burned. Yeah. But how do we discern those circles, Heather?
I think for me, like I've got a group of, I don't know, maybe 20 women I do life with regularly. Like every month, every 2 months, we'll kind of hang out for coffee, different people. There's some that I think are amazing, but they haven't been burnt by gossiping yet. Young people, they chat, they can chat. They haven't been burned by gossip. You ever been burned by gossip?
Yeah.
I have when I was younger. I remember someone said, "Did you say this about me?" And I was like,
it comes back.
I had to think, did I say it? Who did I say it to? I know I thought it.
Yeah.
But then I remember in that moment thinking, I've got to be a better gatekeeper of my words. But I hadn't learned that lesson yet.
Right.
So for someone to tell me something really, really important, I don't know that I would have been safe before I learned that lesson.
Right.
Now it's like a vault. Someone tells me something. And
it doesn't go anywhere.
Sometimes Jimmy go like, you never told me they're expecting. I'm like, well, you know what? I found out. And they say, don't share.
So you don't.
I don't. And they're like, well, you could have told Jamie. I'm like, but when you said don't say anything.
You don't.
I'm not saying anything. And so I think even for me, that group of 20, there's some I love to do life with. I can laugh harder than anyone I've laughed with before, but I wouldn't tell them if I was struggling in my marriage. I might not tell them. I might say, my kids are walking through stuff, I need some prayer. I'm probably not telling them the dicey situation.
Keeping it a little generic.
Yes. And I think that's just for safety and protection for you, for your children, whatever the situation is. And it's not that you're keeping that at arm's length. It's actually wisdom, but it's wisdom and protection for them as well.
I'm like that with my kids, because I'm like, sometimes it's not my story to tell you, and so I'm honoring my relationship with my child and keeping that between me and them, so that they know when I tell mom something, it's not going to the prayer group.
That's right. Yes. And some people will say, well, I can't believe you didn't tell me that when you were walking through that season. And it's the same thing, but it's I don't have the permission to do that. It's not my story. Now, if it's my story, I don't mind sharing it, but again, it's not going to be with the masses. I have about 2 or 3 that I'll share with, and that's going to be it.
And they're a vault too. That's where you learn is there's this meme that says, sometimes I'll share and say something to somebody, and then I'll know if it gets out, I'll know where the leak is.
Yes, that's right. People will test it. Yeah, and I think that's true. It's knowing who can be trusted, who can be influenced, because there's other people I know, they will pull everything out of you. And you don't even realize you've developed.
Well, they're careful about it because they'll share too much and you'll think, oh, they're opening up, let me share. And so it's kind of, you have to be careful.
The next thing you know, you're like, great, they just told that person who can't be trusted with much, a whole lot.
And do you think that the church and Christians and religious circles have been bad about talking too much? We talk too much.
And I feel like I grew up in more of a culture like that, or it probably was predominant, back then. Maybe more people did it. Everyone had their mom on the telephone back in the day, and the grandmas and the Sunday school teachers, and it was the old prayer chain. But even now, like if someone emails me, calls me and says, will you pray, I'll stop and pray right then, because I want to be the person who stops and prays before I share. But I think there's been more teaching about gossip. I remember being young, and I was probably 18 in a service, and I remember just feeling convicted about gossip. Because it was, people just did it. People do it now. And I remember hearing that there was this man, he was an usher, and I remember hearing about him. If he's ever in a room and someone's talked about, he'll actually get up out of his seat and leave. And so I went up to him and I'm like, can you please pray for me? And so since that day, I've had a lot of conviction about talking about people. Now, have I slipped? 100%.
Of course,
But I try to live in that place that if it's not mine to share, I don't want to be a part of it.
I'm with you on that. And I think it's something that we learn every day, and the older we get, the better we get at it, where it's like, I'm not going to get involved in that conversation. And often because you've been on the receiving end of things coming back, and it's hurtful. And so you learn, I don't want to be the one that causes hurt. And you say it so well, some people are your crowd, some are your crew, a few are your covenant. Please explain what that means, your covenant. I guess we kind of did.
We can go through it. Like the crowd, to me, you're having a lot of fun. There's not a lot of responsibility. Let's just hang out, have a blast. We love each other. We're there for each other. We might not know the deepest things about each other, but man, we need
Yeah.
We need the crowd.
Yes.
You know? And then inside of that, we've got our crew. Those are our buddies. We want to hang out with them on Friday nights, on our nights off, on our Sunday afternoons. We want to go to the beach with those people. But then your covenant, these are the people you know. It doesn't matter what I pour in their lap.
Right.
It's not going anywhere. It's not even going to their best friend.
Yeah.
It's actually being stopped. It's being held. And I know I can break down and it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And covenant people are very hard to find.
They are.
Because they're not only will they,
Yeah.
to me, because I can pour something out, some of you ever poured something out and you're like, they just haven't listened to one thing I said.
Yeah. They didn't get it.
They didn't
They hear me.
They were distracted.
Yeah.
And so that's even grieving, thinking, finally I've shared. I'm going to share. I'm going to be
I'm
bold.
burdened
I'm gonna
myself.
share. And then you're like, this person's not even locked in to how deep this is. And so what happens is then we just keep things to ourselves. Because we think,
You withdraw and you don't share it because they don't get it.
It's not worth it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. And I think finding those people, you're right. And I think if there's something I've learned as I get older, is that I want to be a covenant friend.
Yeah.
You know, where you do have your few people around you and they know that it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and in ministry, I think that should go without saying. Anything told to you should stop there.
Yeah.
It should stop there.
Yeah.
Some of you have been inviting the multitude into your garden and wonder why you have no peace and intimacy. And I love this because I jotted this down, surrounding ourselves with the wrong people will limit our peace, will challenge our peace, but can it also limit the fruit of our calling if we're surrounded by the wrong people? You might not get to where you want to go if you got the wrong people around you.
Yeah, there's a saying, I don't know who said it, but your associations determine your destination. And so those people I'm surrounding myself with. So if I'm constantly around people who leak, if I'm constantly around negative people, this is a thing I will tell my kids forever, where there's a will, there's a way. They hate the saying because it means, mom's going to make us do it, or we're going to do it. And I feel like if you surround yourself by a village of, if God said it, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
If that's the promise of your life, we're sticking to it. But then there's, just like the 2 spies that went into the promised land. Everyone else they all saw the same thing, but they didn't see the same thing.
Right.
They came out saying, this is a land flowing with milk and honey. This is what the Lord's promised us. And everyone else was like, well, the people were really big.
Right. Yeah.
They were really that great, And so, and you have those doubters and those naysayers, and then it's like, do you ever get to where you're supposed to be? Because you're not surrounded by the people who say, yeah, you're right, those guys were huge, but God said it.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. This is what happened, but God said it.
Yeah.
So if you're surrounded by the wrong people continually, so if you only have the multitude, you're going to have a lot of murmuring.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot of complaining. You're going to have a lot of people who don't really see what you see. And if that's the basis of your circle, because you're worried about making sure everybody has a seat at the table,
pleasing everybody. Goodness,
then if you're constantly dragging chairs up for people, then you're going to have a multitude of nattering or vision.
Right.
Just
how do you have clarity when you have too much voice? Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yes. And we even say that at home to the kids when they were younger. We were going to figure this out. Because why? Because everyone's like, we want to go to McDonald's. We want to go to Taco Bell. You're trying to celebrate something. We're like, shh, I'm actually going to stay home tonight. And that is the thing. It's too many cooks in the kitchen. And I think there's a difference between inclusion and intimacy. Right?
It's so good.
So I think you can include people, but I don't think everyone needs access to your intimate parts of your life.
Yeah, I love the word access because that's something I've had to learn is that not everyone deserves that access. And when they prove to you the level of access that they should have, you've got to adjust the level of access when they prove that they're not capable of more.
Yeah.
I think Lisa Turker said that.
Okay.
Something about the level of access, but it's so good.
And I think it's maturity on the other side. Like I had a big birthday gathering. I think there was like 12 to 15 ladies there. And all of a sudden I was like, this one girl should have been here. I was mortified that I had invited her. Yeah. So literally later that night or the next morning I texted her and I was like, I don't know how this happened, but you should have been there. Yeah. And she says, I struggled with it. Oh. But she said, I'm mature enough to realize that it's okay. Right. Do you know what I mean? I didn't have to be there. Yeah.
That
And
does
so-
come with maturity.
And I think that maturity, though, to me, gives someone more access because
Yeah.
they weren't kicking and screaming and,
Yeah.
and chatting with everyone else on how they should have been
Yeah.
there. And, I thought, wow, that's actually...
Or mad at you.
Yes.
What was the problem?
Yeah, she showed a lot of maturity. And
Yeah.
I mean, I had to show humility to say, shoot, there should have been an extra seat there for you.
Yeah. And that's part of like learning and growing.
Yeah.
And, we all kind of go through those where you won't do that again because you're
Right.
like, you're going to give that a second thought next time. So
Yeah.
it's true. We learn along the way. Some of you confide, we just talked about this, the intimacies of your heart into the 12 and don't realize their ears and lips aren't mature or tight enough to carry what you share. And I love this, and we've kind of said before, I mentioned this to you, but how do we stay open and loving and all of the things and the seat at the table and the welcoming heart and spirit without coming across guarded when we know that we need to limit some of that access? How do we do that? Because the very people that we need to guard ourselves against are not going to like any of the boundaries you set. They're not going to like it.
I feel like being wise as a serpent, gentle as a dove, so that people don't know that they're actually on the outer courts.
Right. How do we do that? Do you have two parties?
I think for me, it probably is.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like I have a mentoring group and I've got, 12 women who will sit in my living room and we go deep.
Yeah.
I go deep, but I don't always bear everything.
Right.
But someone there might not realize that because I think you can still be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like we said, we can say we're having challenges in our finances.
Right.
They don't have to know that somebody's gone bankrupt and
Yeah.
they've got,
You don't
all
have to
that.
share
They
it
can just
all.
say, we need a financial miracle
Yeah.
or we're believing God for this. And so I think it really is wisdom because some people, what they do is they just shut down totally.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think when we shut down completely, what happens is it doesn't give people opportunity to share. So I tell people all the time, vulnerability opens a door for people to share. So when I'm
that's so
vulnerable,
good,
then
yeah.
if I say, hey, I know I keep saying it's like kids, but hey, I'm having problems with my children, or I need wisdom in raising the last 3 teenagers we have at home. When I say that, someone in the group who's struggling with children,
They're going to feel
they
free to
now
share.
think, oh man,
Yeah. And yet you didn't say what.
No, you don't
just
say
said,
what,
yeah.
but they're like, man, if she's struggling,
Yeah.
I need prayer for my kids too, because before that, people don't have authority or they're too scared to say things aren't perfect.
Yeah.
If someone says, we have lots of people who'll be like, I need a financial miracle. Well, if you sit with somebody who's never struggled with finances, are they judging you 100%?
100%. Yeah.
So I always pray every day for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And
Yeah.
what someone told me about 10 years ago, we were going through crazy stuff, and they said, well, you pray for understanding, right? And I said, yeah. And they're like, how do you think you get understanding? I'm like, by walking through things.
Oh, it's
Because then
so
you're
true.
so compassionate.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't have 2 dimes to rub together,
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
When I was younger, we've been there. So I can be compassionate and not say, well, why doesn't she get another job? Or why doesn't her...
Yeah.
Maybe they've tried those things.
Yeah.
Maybe they...
It's so true.
Yeah, so the grace
and
of
when
God-
I think that's why I never begrudge the things that I've walked through,
Yes.
because I know that it's helped me have compassion for someone else in a
Yes.
situation. Like I never struggled with mental health or depression or things like that. And so I was always a little critical. Like,
Right.
pull it together.
Right.
Like, come on. Like, how hard can it be? And so a couple years ago, I hit rock bottom where I was like, oh my gosh, this is what it feels like to not feel happy to get up in the day and to be struggling. And I'm like, I needed to walk through that so that now I have empathy and compassion. It's not just pulling it together.
Yeah, and you're going to pray a little differently. People.
And listen differently.
Yeah, and you're pulling from that place of, okay, I have had hope in that area.
Yeah.
So I'm believing I have the authority to pray and partner with you, right, because you've walked through that.
Right.
Yeah.
It kind of debunks the whole thing where it's like, well, if you're doing everything right, you're going to have all the grace of God follow you all the days of your life, and you'll have no problems and no... I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I think we have to walk through
You
things
do.
so that we understand it. Jesus going for 40 days, man, he met it all.
Yeah.
Where the enemy was coming and hitting him left and right with this, that, and the other. He experienced
That's
it.
right.
Yeah. Loving people well doesn't mean giving people access, we kind of talked about this too, to every level of your heart, and it certainly doesn't mean giving them access to your inner circle. Keep that to yourself.
Yeah.
Be careful who you let in there.
And there's some people who, once they get close enough to you, they think they should be at those intimate gatherings.
Yeah.
Or if they were at the last one, then well, where's my invite? I was really upset that I didn't get invited.
Right.
I'm sorry you felt that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't intentional to exclude you. And I think that's the thing. And I try to tell my kids that when you're not invited somewhere, it probably wasn't even to exclude you.
Yeah, don't take it personally.
No, it's not always a personal thing. And then it gets messy when we take it personal, when that's not how it was ever meant to be, because then it's taking the joy from you. If you plan this big birthday party for a friend, I didn't get invited, and I think, oh, why wasn't I there?
Yeah.
And now it's taken the joy away from what you've planned for something, because there's something going on in our world. Yeah.
How do we guard against that, though? Like in ministry, one of the things you'll hear that's so common and prevalent is, well, it's a cliquey church. Oh, it's a cliquey this. How do we guard against that, where we're like, okay, you do have your inner circle, but like you said a little bit earlier, is having the wisdom to know, including loving everyone really well, but keeping yourself and your heart safe, because people, not everyone really wants to be your friend. They want the inside scoop, but they don't really like you.
Right. They want access to who you have access to.
How do you guard yourself with that?
I think you have to pray for the Lord to keep your heart tender. I know my mom, so my parents are pastors, and my mom, they had this couple come in the church, and they were older. So I find as you get older, it's harder to make friends.
Right, yeah.
And she said, these people have a table full of people every Sunday. Do you know why? I'm like, why? It really wasn't profound. She said they put a ham and a roast on every Sunday, and they go up to people after church. Would you like to come to our house for dinner? Would you like to come to our house? So often we're waiting to be invited.
Right.
And I think I did another post about this one day, is we're so waiting to be invited. We're sitting around waiting for you to invite me, when the Lord's like, I've granted you with a home that you prayed for, a kitchen table that you purchased, chairs around your table. Why aren't you filling it with people? Why are you waiting on other people?
Right.
You know, we just want to bring our little crock pot and support what you're doing, but create community. Who is it that you're drawn to? Who is it that you're like, I would love to get to know that family better, you know? And I know people say, oh, this is cliquey, that's cliquey. Well, to be honest, what I've noticed, because I love watching social media, and I love seeing the people in the church connect. They're like, oh, these guys all went kayaking together. That's amazing. These guys all went camping together.
It's cool.
They have things in common that they like to do. I don't know if that's cliquey, or it's just you've connected around you know, commonalities.
And it's the insecurity in someone else that's going to find a negative in something that's not meant to be negative. And I think when you say create community, sometimes for people, do you find it's hard for them to do that because of fear of rejection?
Yes.
What if people say no?
People will say no. People say no to us.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't take it personally. I say, okay, those two are gone. Who else do you want to sit at the table? I don't take it personally. And I think there's, well, my mom, I say a lot about my mom.
Moms are awesome.
I don't know if she's watching, but there's a lid for every pot. In friendship, in marriage, you know, there's people who connect that I'm like, I might be glad I'm not invited to their table. You know, they're not, don't have things in common with me, but when you look around, there's a lot of people who have commonalities, kids age, you know, age ranges, crafts, camping trips, whatever
different
it is.
Seasons of life for people.
Yes.
Yeah. Learn to be part of a multitude and create a table. That's what Heather's just talking about. But, capital, B-U-T, remember, when you head to the garden, take your covenant 3. So good. Such a good reminder. How do you know, I'm sure you've had similar situations when someone comes at you and says, God told me to tell you this. And you're like, that does not witness with me at all. How do you, and maybe they were in your covenant 3. And then all of a sudden they've spoken something that you're like, that doesn't hit right. What do you do with that when this was your circle, and now all of a sudden it's flipped upside down?
I think those can be messy. I think it depends on who the relationship is, because if it's your covenant 3 and it's a mentor, and they say that and you put a lot of hope in that, it can derail you. At the same time, we are meant to walk with Christ and have confirmation in our heart. So if you're saying it doesn't feel good with you, and we've put all our hope in man instead of in Christ, then that's really on us.
That's really good.
And so I think we can get that out of order. If it's a peer, I always say to people, now as you get older, you receive a word, you know, someone says, I really see this over your life. If it doesn't resonate in that season, I'll say, that's great. I'm gonna pray about that. And until it starts to, because there's some words we had when we were young, or people could say, I could see you and Jamie doing this. Those things are coming to pass now.
No, years later.
But at the time, I'm like, if I were to step out in that then, it wouldn't have been wisdom.
No.
But I even think mentors, like as a mentor, I'm sure that I've said something to somebody young before, oh, I really see this over your life, and it could have derailed them. And I don't think that's ever a mentor's or discipler's intention, they're probably thinking you are going to search it out.
Yeah.
But we can get so excited and run, get the cart before the horse.
It's so true. And relationships, why I wanted to have Heather on and talk about this is because relationships are so tricky, and they can be so, and yet it's such a big part of our life as we move on through the different seasons of our lives, and who you surround yourself with, it does matter. Question, Heather, what qualities should we look for in that covenant 3? Like, what qualities are you looking for?
I think everyone's will be different.
Yeah.
For me, I want to have a lot of fun. I want you to be just as trustworthy as you are fun.
Yeah.
I want you to bring both of those to the table.
Yeah, so we can laugh together.
Yes. I would say trustworthy is a big one. For me, also faithfulness. Do what you say you're going to do. Show up when you say you're going to show up.
That's a big one today. That doesn't always happen.
No.
There's a lot of flakiness going on.
And so to me, show up when you say you're going to be there. You know, if I've confided in you something, I want you to remember. Yeah. I mean, I know we're all human. There's days I've forgotten a friend's birthday for sure. Yeah. But be steadfast. Be supportive. Yeah.
That's so good. Really good. I love this. Judas did show up at the garden. Now, this is the thing. This is so good. He was uninvited, though. He didn't get an invite. Mm-hmm. He showed up uninvited, and he came with the appearance of friend-like welcome and a kiss. Mm-hmm. How do you spot the Judas at your table?
I think our discernment tells us. Mm-hmm. I think we know when Judas is at our table, but we struggle with leaving them out.
Right.
I think we struggle with, because I know they're not my inner circle, but they're close enough to me that I'm like, well, maybe we should just invite them. Right. You ever just invited someone and all hell is broken loose? Because I have. Yeah. Or I felt, I don't know about this, and you share it with, say, other covenant, and they're like, well, I think it'll be okay. And next thing you know, you're like, mm-hmm.
And it's not.
And I think, but we all carry different gifts. Right. So if you have the gift of discernment, you might be discerning that. Right. Other people might think you're paranoid. Yeah. Right? And so it's trying to figure all of that out. But in that, I think I know I was going off the internet that day. I'm like, I need to stop typing. But I was like, interesting. He showed up at the garden uninvited, and then he betrayed the Lord. Yeah. Because I don't think he had the maturity yet to be in that inner circle. Yeah. And I do know he had an assignment. And everyone's like, he had an assignment. I get that. But for me, if you can just have an imagery of he wasn't invited and he showed up unannounced with a kiss, showing that I do support you, but in his heart he wasn't. Just like you said, there's people in our life who really don't want access to us. There's a different assignment or a different plan.
Or can't support. They really can't even support what you're doing genuinely because they really don't want to see you do well. Yeah. And I think that has got to be who you surround yourself. If you're watching today, who you surround yourself with matters. Reaching that next level of where God has called you to. If there's someone at your table that makes you feel a little like, oh, I shouldn't do that, I shouldn't have said that, you got to look at that. You got to be careful about that.
And you have to search it out. I was young in ministry, and I had this lady, she stood up, and she was an apostle in Canada, and she said, you, and I was like, oh great, she's going to call me out. And she said, you feel like you're very judgmental. And I was like, I've got a pretty good grid on these people. Yeah. And she said, you actually carry the gift of discernment. And she said, but what you need to do is, instead of letting that swing to judgment, you need to pray. Good. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm really good at judging. Yeah. But I didn't have the heart posture of Jesus, which is, we want to see these people saved, redeemed, made whole, cleaned. Right? I was like, oh, we're ready to bury these people. Because you see a red flag. A red flag isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just means you have to use your wisdom and say, they might not be ready for the covenant, but I still want to love them because God's doing a work in people. Like, there's times I wasn't ready to be in the covenant, but I'm so thankful people didn't push me off. They continued to train, mentor, bless, pray for me instead of just writing me off. And I think in our culture now, like we were joking, cancel culture, we think, she has one ex, she's done. And instead of learning to walk with people through that.
Because we can grow through that too.
100%. Yeah. Yes.
Don't you think too that we need to have, if it's on the other side, the integrity that if we're sitting at a table that we know we shouldn't be at, to get up and leave? Yes. Even if you think, man, I want to be in this group so much, but you know that I have an issue with this one and I don't. You've got to have the integrity to say, you know what? I gotta go.
Love you guys. It's been great.
Yeah,
But
and that's okay.
I don't feel peace about being here. And you know what? They might not have felt peace about you being there either. So it's actually a win-win.
It's a win.
That's what Jesus said. Didn't he say? He said, don't take a seat at this table. Sit at the back of the room, and if you're invited in, well, sometimes when you're at the back, you can just slip out too.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. Well, I had somebody say to me one time, and he had a prophetic gifting, and he said, there's going to be people that God is going to remove from your table. Let them.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to just be, okay, I don't like this. This hurts. Like when you're doing something and you're in ministry and people leave, and they will. Sometimes you've got to be okay with that and trust the process. Or if it's in your life and a friend, drops you cold and there's all these, sometimes it's God's way of saying, that's not for you.
Yeah, and I've heard it said before, stop holding on to people the Lord's trying to remove for your protection.
Ooh, that's so
and we'll
good.
keep fighting and holding because they might be a comfort to us. They might be a dysfunctional support.
Right.
Who knows in that season, but we had a pastor come in years ago and he said, we had just church planted in London, Ontario, and he said, look around your table. And we thought we had the best ministry team. We looked around the table and he said, the face of this table will change by next year.
Ooh.
And I remember thinking, well, you're not going to leave. I'm definitely not leaving.
Yeah.
But people will come and go, and they don't always have to go on bad terms.
No, that's the thing.
But
it doesn't have to be bad terms.
Yeah, sometimes they're just being released into the next season, and we don't want to hold them if the Lord's trying to move them on. A lady at our church gave an awesome analogy years ago, and she said, when a train pulls up, people get off and on that train. And then some people might be on for 10 stops while you're sitting there. Some might be on for 2 stops. Enjoy them for whatever stop the Lord has them on, and don't keep them on there longer. They're going to miss their own stop.
That's the let them theory, everyone. It is. It's letting people, allowing God to work in the lives of those around us. And I think we need to stop feeling like we need to tell people what they need to do. TJ and I talked a little bit about that. Is sometimes we think we're the Holy Spirit to people. We need to stop. Just let God do what God's going to do. Pray for them, but allow God to do the work. He's got the best job, the best ideas. He's going to do it perfectly.
And we're trying to hold on to people that the Lord's trying to remove for their protection, for our protection.
It's dangerous, actually. You say at the very end, love well and use wisdom. What are some practical ways that we can just show love well, loving people well, but still protecting our heart and our table and our inner circle all at the same time?
I think love well for me. I think of my husband. He loves people well. He'll stop and make sure everybody is seen. Now, I don't always do that. I'm the one who will be more like tunnel vision to get out, say, the back of the pew, to be honest. He's more, he'll put a hand on everyone. It's good to see you, making sure
eye
people
contact.
feel seen and heard and loved, stopping long enough. And that's what he always says, walk a little slower. Walk a little slower, because if I say to you, hey, how's it going? And I'm not looking at you because I really don't want to hear if you're having a bad week. And so we'll do that with people. We're short with them, so we're not really looking at
We're not
them.
wanting to connect.
No, we're like, I want to connect and say hi, but I actually don't want to. Do we want to journey with people? Do we want to say, hey, it's good to see you? How was your week? And actually give people permission to be seen, to be heard. And so I think loving them is being patient with them, walking with them in the journey. If they've had, 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, it's kind. It doesn't envy. So if you're doing something, I'm praying, you know what, God, use Larissa in what she's doing. It doesn't envy, it doesn't boast, it's not proud, it's not rude, it doesn't keep records of wrong. So if you did me wrong last month, I'm not like, well,
we can let it go.
Let it go, move on. We're all human, and so.
And not everything is meant as an attack or as a slight. And I think that's where we've got to have a little bit, I had to learn to have tougher skin and not take things personally. Maybe they didn't see me at the grocery store. Maybe they were focused on what they were doing and they didn't, instead of looking at, they ignored me. Like thinking the worst of people.
Always. We had, I remember at our church plant, because we used to carry the coffee urns. We didn't have a full coffee team, and one of my best friends was helping me that week. She's carrying this massive coffee urn, and someone went up to me after, and they're like, she never said hi to me this Sunday. She walked right by, and I said, the girl with the coffee urn? Of course she walked right by. She probably is mad at you, thinking she didn't even help me through that door. She didn't even help me. So it's all perception. And so I think if we can walk with healed hearts, and that's what I always pray, like, Lord, if there's any offense in me, create in me a clean heart. If there's any offense in me, any brokenness, can you heal that? Because otherwise we see everything through a completely different lens.
It's so true. And learning to look first at ourselves before the Bible says it best, deal with our own stuff
Yes.
before we're dealing with somebody else's. What can we do better?
Yeah.
I love it. Well, you said it, you prayed it in our prayer before we went live, and I'd love for you to close this time out in prayer, that we would be good boundary keepers, that we would have wisdom, that we would love people well, and also acknowledge and realize we're all doing the best we can, and when we know better, we do better, and that we continue to grow and come in tune with this way so that we can love well this way.
Yeah.
Awesome. Would you pray for us?
Yeah, I just want to say one last thing too.
Yeah.
I think if we've ever been in a situation where we felt we've been kept out, I'm sure we all can attest to that. Don't take it personally.
Yeah.
Don't take it personally. That person could have a boundary up because they've walked through trauma or betrayal. They could be healing, and I think that's the biggest part. Is I want to have healthy boundaries because it's good for me. It's good for my mental health. It's good for my spiritual health. There's people, even coworkers I can work with, have different jobs, and I'm like, some of them just suck the life out of you.
Ugh.
It's not that they're not great people.
Yeah.
They're amazing people, but they just, what do we call them? Drainers, strainers, retainer. You kind of are.
I think, and normalizing that that's okay. I think that is what, if we say anything today, I hope that gives you freedom, and to know that it's okay. If someone is stressing you for the moment, take a minute, take a beat. It's okay to have boundaries and to take that time to look inside and say, okay, God, what do you need to do through me so that I can love other people well and not be wounded in these situations? I think it's okay.
Good. All right, let's pray. So, Father God, I just thank you so much. Lord, first of all, I thank you for your demonstration and your example through your word, God, of different spheres, not only of influence, but of friendships. And God, I just pray for all of those watching that we would be better boundary keepers, that those people who need love and encouragement, God, that we would continue to show up and support and pull chairs up to that table. But God, I just pray for the wisdom when we're seeking out and searching, God, that we would have the wisdom to know who our covenant brothers and sisters are, not to keep people out, but Lord, just to keep us on the straight and on the narrow, that they would have ears to hear what it is you're saying, even for us, for one another. And so, Lord, I just pray that boundaries wouldn't be a triggering word, that it would actually be an empowering word. So we just ask for that. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Just when you were praying, Heather, I just thought this one thing maybe we could pray on too is maybe you're watching today and they're like, I don't even have a 3. I don't have a covenant 3. I just feel so alone. I'm walking alone, and I just want that, support system. There are so many people that are struggling with that. And maybe you're watching today. Can we just pray just quickly that God would set you? He sets those he loves in families. He sets those he loves in friendship, and that you will find those people that God has ordained to walk with you. Let's just pray quick about that.
So, Lord, I just thank you that you create all kinds of different people. And Lord, maybe they're people that we've overlooked that are actually the people that we need. And so, Lord, I pray that we are not looking for the flashy. We're not looking for those with the biggest gift, but we're actually looking for those who are faithful, who walk with you. And so, Lord, I pray you give us eyes to see and ears to hear who it is, what it is, where these friendships are, people that we can walk with and talk with. And so I just feel like an exhortation, even if you are walking alone, because that's what often happens is we're looking at a certain personality or a certain person, like we want to walk with them and they don't have the capacity, but I believe that God's put people around you that have capacity. And so, Lord, I pray that you just start to highlight those people, maybe that have been sitting by you for weeks, for years, that they would be highlighted to you.
So good. Amen, amen. I pray that encourages your heart today. And we shared just the other day Heather's post. Have a read through it. I tried to highlight as much as we could. But you're going to want to read that and really ask God to highlight things for you that maybe you need to pull out of that. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me.
So good to have you. And I just love your heart. Thank you for sharing and that prophetic gift. I pray that God continues to just pour in more. And I'm sitting front row to make sure I don't miss it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I'm back next Tuesday night. Join us for our worship celebration. It's our final wrap-up of Season 18 of Embrace Worship. We'd love to have you join us at 7:33 for that service. And I'm back tomorrow for Coffee and Devotions with Judy. We'll see you then. Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, thank you.